So if you're worried that maybe you cheated in your marriage and you're worried that that's going to impact how the assets are divided, California is a no-fault divorce state. So your assets are divided according to community property law, meaning that if your asset, if you earned money during the marriage, or you had an asset that appreciated during the marriage that you purchased during the marriage, then that's a community property asset that will be divided equally. Whether you cheated or not, it's divided equally. California is no fault. Other states in the United States have equitable distribution, and they're fault states where if you cheated during the marriage, you'll actually be punished, and maybe you won't get your fair share of the asset. I don't know. I don't practice in those states. But California is no fault. So the judge isn't going to penalize you for cheating by not giving you your community property interest in the assets. You're not going to be penalized when it comes to child support or spousal support. Support's going to be calculated pursuant to California community property law based upon a software program the court's going to use, where it's going to input various numbers related to your income and mortgage interest and everything else, and health insurance payments related to on your tax return. Whether you cheated isn't one of the inputs. Nobody cares. It's just how it is. It's just according to community property law and the family code. If your ex cheated on you and you're feeling hurt and wronged and you feel like you want to get justice and he or she needs to be punished by the court financially for cheating, I'm really sorry, but you're going to be very disappointed because, like I said, the judge really doesn't care. The judge doesn't want to hear about it, honestly. It's just going to waste the judge's time. And I know that's pretty hurtful because you're extremely upset, and it sucks. It's wrong that your spouse cheated on you. I'm not trying to minimize it or say that, it's not a big deal or you shouldn't be upset about it. Cheating might come up in some aspects of your divorce. Maybe if you were cheated on and as a result you got an STD, that could potentially be seen as an act of abuse. If your ex abused you and you're entitled to restraining order under the Domestic Violence Protection Act, there are some kind of financial components related to a restraining order. If you're entitled to a restraining order, you could be entitled to spousal support. Your ex could be required to pay your legal fees. The fact that you were abused could protect you from having to pay spousal support, which is pretty cool, right? So if you're abused, maybe you won't have to pay spousal support. You probably still will have to pay spousal support. That's not one of the areas where judges really lean on, oh, you're a high earner, but you were abused. You don't have to pay any spousal support, but it could lower your support obligation. Maybe it could be down to zero, but probably not. But I guess that could come into play related to cheating, but that's kind of attenuated, right? Generally speaking, you need to think they cheated. Well, that's unfortunate, and I can be upset about it, but it's probably going to not impact our financials of our divorce too much. The only other issue that I guess could come up is if your spouse cheated on you, had an affair, and used your community property funds to pay for their affair. That arguably would be, you shouldn't have to contribute to that community property debt if it was for your spouse's affair, and your spouse should arguably have to reimburse the community for spending that money on his or her affair. So that's something probably we would want to involve a forensic accountant to do a full report to determine what amount we're talking about, right? If it's a few $1,000s, it's probably not worth litigating. If it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably is, right? Or it's worth negotiating using that report as leverage to get what you're entitled to. So, it's worth a deep dive. It's worth asking a bunch of questions. But in general, your spouse having sex with someone else in itself probably isn't going to have a financial benefit to you. There are other ways to try to use it to your advantage. Sometimes if your spouse has cheated on you, they might feel guilty, where then maybe they'll be more willing to, give you what you want or to walk away and kind of move on. They might not always want to make amends with you, so this might be a good time to kind of reach agreements and maybe have a negotiated divorce without a lot of conflict when he or she is feeling, kind of bad about what they did. If there's been cheating in your marriage and you're thinking that the judge is not going to give you custody of your kids because you cheated on your spouse, or maybe you're thinking that your spouse won't get custody because he or she cheated on you, It's usually not how it works. The standard isn't giving the kid to whoever was more faithful during the marriage. You might want that to be the standard based on your experiences, and you might believe that because your spouse cheated, it makes them a bad parent, but the judge doesn't see those as one and the same. His or her ability to keep his or her hands to themselves versus their ability to be a good parent are two very different buckets, according to the judge and in California family law. So it's not about whether he or she wasn't faithful to you. It's about his or her behavior with your kids. If you think something about the cheating shows that he or she isn't a good parent, tell us about it. We'll vet it and tell you if you have a good case or not. You probably don't, but maybe you do. Talk to us about it. Is she or he bringing a bunch of inappropriate people around your kids all the time? Is he or she, having sexual behavior in front of your kids with these people? What else involved? There have been scenarios with our clients where cheating, the act of itself, wasn't the issue, but all the other behaviors related to the cheating around the children was an issue where the child was suffering detriment. So it really depends on the circumstances. But in general, if we're going to say a hard, fast rule is if your spouse cheated, will cheating in itself prevent them from getting equal parenting time with the kid? Probably not. It's probably not the big piece of evidence that's going to win your child custody case. It's really a nuanced approach based on your child's best interest, and it's probably not going to relate too much to the cheating. You might be wondering if your spouse cheating on you will have an impact on child support. Probably not. California is a no-fault divorce state, and child support is calculated based on California guideline. You usually don't deviate from California guideline. The only time you might is if you want to just set child support to 0 and not pay each other child support. Usually we can do that for you. But usually we just follow the guideline unless we can reach an agreement with your spouse to some other number. We do that too. But cheating is not really going to come into play. Maybe he or she will agree to pay you double child support because he or she feels bad about cheating, and somehow it's an emotional reaction where they agree to give you more money. Fine. But under the California law, is it required? Definitely not. If you have any questions about cheating and child support and how they relate or anything else, please feel free to contact Fenchel Family Law, and we would love to help you walk you through it.